We'll, in the beginning, discuss the difference between the awareness of a spiritual human being whose mind, emotions, heart, soul, body are completely aware of a delicateness in reality. That's the transference point between a controlled spiritual person who lives there consciously always throughout their whole life, and very few people get it. And people in the world are always aware of their case, their involvement with the world, and they have buttons about things and they react. There is no case when you're spiritual. You're not who you are, where you were, your education, even your parents. You'll have a beyond precious relationship with your mom and dad, your siblings, but there's no reaction to it. And your relationship with your mom and your dad and your siblings and your friends and the loves of your life and the people that move you, inspired you, are not in this world at all. Your awareness is transplanted to a higher plane of beingness. Literally heaven. It's a place of godness forever. There is an unimaginable, unbounded universe of magnificent spiritual presence. We talked about going out into, like, when you've been in different places in your life when it was really dark late at night and you had that lush atmosphere of all the stars twinkling in the sky above you, and they're like 100 trillion fireflies. You feel the presence, the beauty. It's that yellow white, and the world doesn't exist in those moments. And from the first moment of spiritual consciousness, the world has never existed to you. And if you are spiritual, you were spiritual. Before birth, during birth, after birth, and forever. I'm trying to make it very clear that there is this atmosphere that wise men have always called spiritual consciousness. It's just something mystical, permanent. Around the world they have different words for it. It has nothing to do with comfort in this world, or safety, or power, or anything. If you're spiritual, your body literally doesn't exist. So to communicate with other people is a tremendous challenge. So you have to discipline yourself over a period of years to get it. My friend Jessica has always lived in this place, but never been prideful or respectful of her own place in it, or protected it, because when you're spiritual, you don't protect it. You care, you give, you live for others. And at some point in your life, you realize you've been trashed and trashed and trashed, and you don't get up with a stick and start beating them off. You, in a very wise way, choose your enemies. They're always in consciousness. You choose what to react to and not to. And when you give nothing to Satan, which is the dark force, there are different words for it, Mephistopheles and some great writings. It's the trickster, Satan, the devil. It's the whole world. It's the Garden of Eden. The Bible was originally meant to be a mystical transference of divine presence and knowledge to a text written in leather, carved on stones. And we have the same words. It's still where they're safe from Tibetan monks from thousands of years ago with the block printing, and so they have the original wording, and it's very elegant, very sophisticated language. More sophisticated than some of my friends that teach at Stanford. It's sophisticated in the sense of an unending reality, not just in the mortal mind of some people from this country, from England, from whatever. It's, going back to Latin roots. It's something more sophisticated. The Latin came from the Indus Valley at 3,000 years ago, that in the same place that the Sanskrit began, and these are the original Sanskrit, some of these writings, the Upanishads. Anyway, the point is, when people are truly spiritual and mystical, what they think, what they feel, what they experience has nothing to do with anything that ever happened to you, that you saw, that you read, that you studied, or someone heard. or you repeat it in your mind from the time you were born. If you're spiritual, you weren't born. You're not here, you are literally an openness, a simplicity. It's very fundamentally kind, but it doesn't have that emotion like being kind. You don't need emotion between things. It's just a simplicity, a joyousness that's you can't express. There's no sense of time or place or even beingness. And we began with this, we'll say, with my friend Jessica, with all her relationships. She can right now feel all the friends and fine ones of her life, and still, because she's given everything up, not allow herself to be completely present. So none of us who are spiritual to be completely present, that is, because we're here to help whoever needs help. Help meaning a softly lit candle in your heart for the precious ones you encounter. That's the entirety of the meaning of life. I remember reading, I helped and volunteered at East West Bookshop in Mountain View. I originally saw it in 1967 in a vision, as I've seen this room, and probably in 1968 I saw this gym in '74, where I lived in Redwoods. I saw it. I'm simply saying all spiritual people, we have that. When you allow yourself to sit back and settle out and step away from all the madness, you'll remember all the times you've seen everything that's happening now before, because this is infinitely less. We talked a couple weeks ago about a bumblebee that stepped in a little smudge of honey. And on her foot, the amount of godness of that is 100 trillion infinities of spiritual reality, of that amount of godness. In other words, it's so condensed, the spiritual presence. That's why it's hard to articulate into any common language in the world to express it. So the mystics or the teachers in the Himalayas that I met 50, 60 years ago were like, and since my birth, because they've always been there. We're all spiritual in this room. I've had these visions or moments when we were little children and everything was right with the world. We were floating, we were not our body. We were Jimmy or Johnny or Joan or Annette and certainly Jessica, and you're a little free child, and you've never get what this world is about. Fortunately, for some reason, I get it. The great names we heard about, the Christ figures in history, wherever culture or climate they were from, or all my Tibetan friends or my Jewish friends. I know they talked about moving the center of Judaism, of the Hebrew nation, which is completely spaced spiritually before God. 3,000 years it was moved from Jerusalem to back to Jerusalem, and it was always called the dream of ages. I'm a mystical Jew. I'm not a religious person, never been at all. I've been at every church, every religion in the world, and you'll find spiritual people and not spiritual people. They're the only two people that have ever lived. Jessica's spiritual. Robert is spiritual. So we meet in a quiet land, in the middle of all this hellishness. You know what I'm saying? The point of today's thought is that when we reconcile the fact that there's nothing wrong with us, that being in the world itself is the problem. Because there is no world, according, I said, all the mystics, they all have the same theology. The world is a mystery, a bad dream, a nightmare, an illusion. It's a hell. Some people, religious people, think, well, you do good in here and God approves it, and then you take the next stage, the next flight out to Miami. Now, oh my God, that's That's more confusing than the last lie. There's no room for lies or even truth in spiritual consciousness. There is an openness, an emptiness, a clarity, a simplicity, a purity, a beauty. And it's just a sense you can say nothing about it. I have many friends who are disciplined in different areas and in the arts on every level, and when they're really truly in it, there's a quietude and there's a beauty to it. But this is transcendent in the art of self-discipline, meditation. You're not beating yourself, you're letting go of yourself, of the self that the world makes you be when you're here. We talked about the time machine meditation in Tibet, where you time machine mandala, where you quietly relive all your lives, or you relive this life. You go back before your child, before your birth, and I've never done a Tibetan when I lived up in the mountains there in Nepal and so forth. My friend John and Christopher and Frida Beatty, she was the abbotess and the translator for the Karmapa of the great, great mystical writings and teachings of Tibetan Buddhism, and we just, when we were together, there's no one there. There was no Robert, or as much as I respected and adored and worshipped the monks and the lamas and the nuns who were so godlike, they all had the same atmosphere of my friend Jessica, and they're selfless. And they were a lot tougher than I've ever been. All they did was help the children in the community, the religious leaders 24 hours a day, always in the background. And I don't want you to be in the background anymore. Excuse me. And that's what this is about. I don't want us to have to fight or contend or deal with any longer the hardness of this world. The dream of ages, that there be time no longer, that the mystery of God shall be finished. In other words, a sense of time, relativity in any sense. There's only this mystical atmosphere I tried to present and project at the beginning of this. And if we can get to that place, then we can choose our enemy. It's one enemy, Satan, Mephistopheles, the devil, which is the entirety of the illusion that's projected at us. You can get very quiet, or all in your meditation you can see these 3,000 beings with these tall, dark, conical hats. But in a prayer, in a black magic prayer, it's so stupid. But it's what projects the world. It's the projector of the movie screen, or it's what the world is. It's from these idiots. So you'll have these visions and these contentious moments with dark beings, very, very violent beings, very violent and often in the softest touch to try to confuse you a little bit. And so the point is, don't react, don't go there. Just look at it and be aware, and so you'll know how to present it to the Jessicas in your life, to the ones that are worthy, to the ones you find worthy. But you don't think you're looking for someone worthy. In other words, the meaning of that word is worthy. Are they worthy? Do you see what I'm saying? In the same way, humility is not humiliation, it's humility, it's humble, it's the most powerful emotion we'll ever know. It's looking in your baby's eyes in awe. That's humility. When you look in God's eyes in awe, you'll find God looking in your eyes in awe. These are not just words. God is a human being. God is you when you're very quiet. God has always been you. This is a very temporary, it's a temporal experience. In time, there is no time. You are an endless, unending, beatific presence. That's what you are. So getting over these few short years should not be so difficult once you're touched, and remember. Please be touched, please remember. I'm doing this for one reason. I don't want to see the Jessicas of the world, or my mom, or your mom hurt anymore. You understand? What your mom did to get you through all these years, we don't see it. Because we were living our life, and she had her case inside her life to withstand pressures and egos around her in order to make sure you were fed and safe from the brutality of this world. I know that I'm going to end the brutality of this world on my watch. Please help me, won't you? Find it in your heart, please. You will have gifts and powers from on high, but you meet them in this place of happiness. My friend here talked about someone who dives in the waters with crocodiles, and he knows how to hold a shoe, and he act like one of them. Like if you're with a dog, I've been with wild animals, and fortunately never been killed because I'm too stupid to be afraid. And so if you meet them that way, and you'll find there are no wild animals. There are no enemies. There are no walls. There's nothing in this world to deter you from perfect peace. And when you're there, you'll see the Jessicas in this world. A little addendum to this message is that, to be very honest as a person, I'm doing this because I won't see any Jessica hurt again forever. So it's not just transferring the presence and the power and the gift. They call it the transmission in Tibetan Buddhism, but every religion has this around the world. Every tribe, every mother, every family has this place of communion. And when it's with God directly, it's a mystical place. But if we're here for some reason, we're made to be like the rest here, like the crocodiles, and you'll make a stand that's harder than steel. And you won't let the ruffians hurt your friends or family again. I hope you understand what I just said. And you have that power within you to end the madness and brutality. It's not a physical fight. Quiet yourself, and the devil will be no more. And you get the discipline because you don't want the Jessicas, your mom, your sister, your brother and your father to be hurt anymore, do you? The world's very confusing for all of us. But if you get very quiet before him, the only God, he will get very quiet before you, the only God. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Thank you for listening.